everyone. I am Sia. Thank you for hanging in until the end. Thank you, Evan, for setting this up. So, I am based in the US as well, and I want to talk to you today about one of my biggest realizations as I'm navigating and growing in my little tech ecosystem of data science. So, before I do that, hopefully, I can convince you by how my days are spent. So, like all of you, I like to learn. I have the privilege of accessing online content, and some of it is free, some of it is paid for by some really good Samaritans. But that gives me a lens into how content creators kind of shape their information and how they think about delivering it. It could be videos or reading. So that's one lens. And then I also spend my Saturdays, not today, but most of my Saturdays as a teaching assistant at a data science boot camp that is really people from all walks of life that come to try and be more data literate, regardless of the industry they're in. So let's see, I told you about me learning things. And so I also teach on the weekends, and that gives me a lens into how other people learn. And so there's all these different people from different industries, and they learn differently because they have different contexts. And at work, I get to be both. I get to be a learner and a teacher because as a senior analyst, I have people who will ask questions or I write documentation that they read. So I am transferring information to other people. But also, I have questions. Sometimes I don't know things and I want to ask questions and I learn from other people. So it's both ways. And because of that, you get to see how we all interact with information differently on a spectrum. It is more of a circle, but a spectrum seems like an easier concept to visualize. So, for example, in this scene, if you have seen the show, it's pretty funny, but in Schitt's Creek, we have Moira, the mom, who is trying to cook and trying to convince her son that she wrote this recipe. And they're making a sauce. They get to this point in the instructions where it says to fold in the cheese, and David doesn't know what that means. And Moira doesn't either, but she pretends to, and she keeps saying, well, you just fold it in. You just fold in the cheese, David. I don't know how else I can tell you that. And of course, at some point, he gets really frustrated. He leaves the kitchen. There's bubbles in the sauce. There is no dinner. So that's a mess. And we don't really want to be in this example. We don't want to be the student, the person who's intaking information, or the person who is giving it. Because if you think about it, she is a little frazzled. She's having this point of view as a teacher, but she doesn't really know what she is teaching, which is bad. So we don't want to be in that position because one, we don't want to repeat ourselves. That means we're not listening. We're not taking in the context of the person who's talking. We're just in this mode where I need to transfer this piece of information and I'm doing it. And that's not really the point. We also don't want to say things like, this will be easy and, oh, this shouldn't take long. Now, this might be what you say to make someone feel better, you think. But say you're teaching me something or you're explaining a concept, and then by the end of the explanation, I am confused. Maybe you're showing me how to print Hello World, and I still don't know how to install some package. So I'm lost. I thought it was easy, and now I feel like, oh, this was supposed to be easy, but I don't get it. So no success. And the reason that we tend to default to this is because as humans, we stay on the side of empathy. So one of my favorite people, one of my favorite thinkers online is Tatiana Mack, and she wrote this at the height of the protests last year, where compassion does not need you to understand what other people are feeling or experiencing. It just needs you to believe it in order to help them or to support them. Whereas with empathy, you're trying to draw from within by definition. And this same thing applies to teaching. You don't want to always have to know how this other person learns. You're trying to help them without really putting yourself in it, because that's more successful for them. This is like, it's a chain of information. You are showing someone else and they will show someone else. And how you do that affects how they know it and how they do it for the next person. So it's like this responsibility chain. So, very simple. You can listen. If someone is asking you for help, make sure you have all the information before you just tell them. It might be that they don't know what an IDE is, and you're trying to tell them the command for printing is just print. You're not on the same page. Also, if you have gotten to the point where you have explained something and you've already done it, you should still talk again, check for understanding, kind of meet them where they are. If you think of it as a bridge, you want to walk to the point where they're stuck and walk back with them to your side. You don't want to say, hey, I'm watching you, walk towards me, it's fine, because they don't know how that feels. So, in that vein, we should also be comfortable saying when we don't know things, because it would make the other person feel comfortable. If you're nice when you're doing something, it really translates. People really can ease up when they're interacting with you if they know that you're being honest with them. If Moira would have just said, I don't know what folding the cheese means, let's Google it, they would have had dinner that day. I mean, we wouldn't have had the funny scene, but, they would have had a good sauce. So it's okay to say, I don't know. It's very freeing. And the only way we can get to that point is if we as people are surprised, nicer to ourselves, because we do tend, we're very human, we will default to empathy. So even if we do, we want to try and make sure that that default is projecting something compassionate and kind to the next person, so that they also feel like, hey, I can do this. And like RuPaul says, if you can't be nice to yourself, how are you going to be? I'm messing this up, but like, do it for yourself so that you can do it for someone else. And that is the same lesson with this. So thank you for your time. Apologies for the technical difficulties, and happy Saturday.
Thank you so much. That was really great. I really loved your use of GIFs and I loved the message. It was super good.
Thank you.
I would also like to start off by saying sorry for the technical difficulties. I think that was my fault. I should have caught that in the pre-check.
That's okay.
But yeah, no, I really loved that idea you had from Tatiana Mack about compassion over empathy. That's a really important distinction. But what I guess, like, what makes that distinction for you? What is the difference between being compassionate over empathetic? I know you outlined some things, but I'd love to hear you expand on it a bit more, if that's okay.
Sure. So, Evan, thank you, first of all. You've been here all day, and your team. But so the distinction for me, I can give you an example, is I grew up for 2 decades, I spent in East Africa. The whole context of my life and how I learn things and how I take second chances is based on that culture, right? And then I come to the US for this last decade, and people are more open to failing. People say you can fail a class and retake it in college. And then if you think about a student who is in that mentality, they're not lazy. They
Mm.
maybe have other things going on in life. So if a student comes to me, for example, on Saturday and says, hey, I really need an extension, I can't go, well, why do you need an extension? I really, at this point in my life, don't necessarily, if they're a good student, I'm not going to look for a reason, because I'm trying to find something that I would approve of to give them an extension,
Mm.
but they just need an extension. You don't know. They
Yeah.
could have been having a bad day. It just it shifts the focus from you and your experience to making space for what they need. That's for me the distinction
Yeah.
here.
No, that's a really good point. You put it very eloquently. And you said something that really stuck with me. It's something I've heard before, but it's that kindness is about meeting people where they are, um, to help them. That's something that I really liked and I really loved, and I think it is very true, especially related to what you just said there. Um, Being kind to yourself can be kind of hard, though. Do you have any tips, or do you have any ways that you personally love to be kind to yourself with?
So I like to learn, I said, and sometimes I'm trying to solve something and it's just not happening that
Mm,
day. It's not. And sometimes you have to say, yesterday I knew more than today. Let's celebrate that small win. Celebrating small wins essentially allows me to see that I'm making progress. So I can take a break today because I am not having a bad month or life. I'm
mm.
just having a bad session while
Yeah.
learning. So just acknowledging your small wins, I think, is a really great way to do that.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Often we beat ourselves up for how we view ourselves, not necessarily how things actually went. Um,
Yeah,
and I think weirdly it calls back to the Pomodoro talk, which is about being honest with yourself and being
right.
honest with what you're achieving and how you're treating yourself. I think that's a very good message. Thank you so much. This was a really great talk. And I
Thank
just saw
you.
that someone in the chat said that they really appreciate the distinction between empathy and compassion. And they said thank you for
Oh,
sharing. So
no.
I just wanted to relay that. Um,
Thank you.
with that, I would like to say thank you one last time. I know I've said it bajillion times at this point. And thank you for doing your talk today. I'll talk to you soon. And I must wave goodbye now.